The delegation of Concord scientists crowds Eleanor's lab the following morning, their varied anatomies making the modest university space feel suddenly claustrophobic. She notices how they whisper among themselves in languages their translators deliberately don't convert. Ambassador Krelvok towers over the others, his segmented exoskeleton clicking softly as he moves. Dr. Wright, he begins, mandibles flexing with barely concealed agitation. Surely you understand the implications of what you claim to have discovered. Eleanor meets his four primary eyes steadily. I don't claim anything, Ambassador. I've done it. She nods to her assistant, Marcus, who activates the modified quantum field generator. The air shimmers as temporal energies cascade through the containment field, creating a swirling vortex of blue-white light that illuminates the shocked expressions of the alien delegation. Impossible, mutters a Thalesian physicist, her translucent skin pulsing with nervous bioluminescence. Your equations shouldn't work. The harmonic principles clearly state. That's precisely the problem. Eleanor interrupts, bringing up her notes on the main display. Your civilizations approach time as a rigid construct governed by immutable laws. Humans approach it as a river with currents and eddies that can be navigated by intuition as much as mathematics. She demonstrates by sending a small metal sphere through the field. It vanishes with a soft pop, only to reappear on a shelf where Marcus had placed an identical sphere yesterday, or rather, where he will place it tomorrow. The aliens' monitoring equipment goes haywire as temporal causality inverts locally without collapsing. This contradicts 3,000 years of unified temporal theory. Ambassador Krelvok says coldly, his translator struggling to mask his alarm. Dr. Lena Kazan, Eleanor's mentor and the only other human present, steps forward. Perhaps that's because your unified theory isn't as unified as you believed. The tension in the room thickens as Krelvok signals to one of his aides, who produces a crystalline device that begins scanning the equipment without permission. Eleanor notices how the aide's fingers tremble slightly. Fear, not excitement. The Concord would be pleased to assist in further development of this technology, Krelvok announces with sudden formality. Such a discovery requires proper oversight and resources beyond what your planetary facilities can provide. That's very generous, Eleanor replies carefully. But we're quite capable of continuing our research independently. The ambassador's secondary eyes narrow. Dr. Wright, you don't comprehend the dangers. Temporal manipulation has been theorized as a extinction-level technology. The Concord protocols require what exactly? Eleanor challenges, stepping closer to her creation. That humanity hand over its breakthrough. That we accept your supervision as the price for our own discovery. The lab falls silent except for the gentle hum of the temporal field. Marcus discreetly activates the university's security protocols while maintaining a nervous smile. We didn't come here for your permission, Ambassador. Eleanor continues, her voice steady despite her racing heart. We came out of professional courtesy to inform the Concord of humanity's advancement. Krelvok's posture shifts subtly, a predator reassessing its approach. Very well. The Science Directorate will wish to send a formal delegation. I trust you'll make yourselves available. As the aliens file out, Dr. Kazan whispers, they're terrified, Eleanor. Not of the technology. Of us. Eleanor watches the Concord ship rise into the clouds through her lab window. They should be, she murmurs, thinking of the encrypted data she's already hidden across multiple secure servers worldwide. Because we're just getting started. Eleanor stares at the crystalline data drive in her palm, its surface warm against her skin despite the laboratory's chill. The security team surrounds her, weapons trained on the spot where her future self had stood moments before. Clear the room, she orders, her voice steadier than her hands. And shut down all surveillance. Now. Dr. Kazan approaches cautiously. Eleanor, what did she mean about your grandmother's constellation? Eleanor's breath catches. No one knows about those nights on her grandmother's farm, lying in tall grass while the old woman traced patterns in the stars no astronomer had ever mapped. A private language between them. It means she was really me, Eleanor whispers. No one else could know that. Within an hour, the lab transforms into a fortress. Marcus disables the official monitoring systems while establishing their own security perimeter. The data drive resists conventional readers, its crystalline structure unlike any Earth technology. It's Cronus tech, explains Dr. Kazan, carefully inserting it into a modified quantum scanner. I've only seen references in ancient Concord texts. The holographic display flickers to life, revealing cascading streams of temporal coordinates and fragmented warnings. Eleanor's future self had encoded the data to respond to her brainwave patterns. As Eleanor focuses, the chaotic information resolves into coherent images, surveillance footage of Concord meetings where humanity's fate is discussed with clinical detachment. They've been watching us for centuries, Marcus breathes, watching alien diplomats discuss human potential as one might discuss a virus, planning how to control our development. A section of footage shows Ambassador Krulvok in private conversation with a shadowy figure whose species none of them recognize. The humans have accelerated beyond all projections, the ambassador reports. The right woman's temporal displacement technology is already more advanced than our theoretical models. They're navigating timelines instinctively, without the neural degradation our species experiences. Then the containment protocols must be accelerated, responds the shadowy figure. If they discover their heritage before we're prepared. The message fragments, then continues with Eleanor's future self speaking directly to camera, her scared face tense with urgency. Listen carefully, she says. The Concord fears us because humans can navigate temporal currents naturally. Our brains evolved differently. We dream in multiple timelines simultaneously, always have. The Concord species experience severe neurological trauma when exposed to timeline shifts, but we adapt almost instantly. This makes us dangerous in their eyes. She glances over her shoulder in the recording, as though hearing something approaching. Find the Kronos. They're hiding in plain sight on Earth. Humans like us who've embraced their temporal sensitivity. The listening post at these coordinates will prove everything I told you. But be careful. Attempting to access it will trigger Concord protocols. They'll stop pretending to be diplomatic once they know you found it. The message ends with a set of coordinates leading to a location in the Norwegian Arctic. We need to move. Eleanor decides, already gathering essential equipment. If my future self risked a temporal jump to deliver this warning, we don't have much time. Dr. Kazan's phone chimes with a news alert. Concord ships have been detected entering Earth's atmosphere at multiple points, all designated as diplomatic envoys. Too late, Marcus says grimly, bringing up satellite imagery of a Concord vessel landing just outside the university perimeter. They're already here. Eleanor's mind races through possibilities, calculating temporal variables instinctively in a way she now realizes isn't normal for other species. No, she says with sudden certainty. We still have exactly enough time. Because that's precisely why I would have chosen this moment to warn myself. The United Nations emergency session buzzes with tense energy as Eleanor slips into a seat near the back. On the main floor, diplomats from every nation huddle in whispered conversations, their faces masked with political neutrality that fails to hide their fear. Ambassador Vexlor stands at the central podium, his crystalline form catching the light in hypnotic patterns. The Concord extends its hand in friendship during this pivotal moment in human development. The ambassador's translator conveys in a voice too smooth to be natural. Time manipulation technology presents unprecedented risks to universal stability. We offer our guidance and protection as humanity takes its first steps into temporal science. Eleanor watches the holographic display behind him showcase wondrous technologies, medical advances, clean energy systems, defense platforms, all offered as part of the partnership. Her trained eye notices how each technology, while impressive, would create dependency on Concord resources and expertise. A most generous proposal, says the Secretary General, her expression carefully composed. Though some might wonder why the Concorde suddenly deploys 30 vessels to Earth's orbit as a gesture of friendship, the ambassador's skin pulses with colors Eleanor now recognizes as agitation. Merely a standard protective fleet. The discovery of temporal technology on any world triggers certain protocols. Eleanor feels eyes on her and turns slightly to observe the chamber's shadows. There, partially concealed behind a column, stands a figure whose stillness seems unnatural. The figure, humanoid but with an otherworldly grace, meets her gaze directly and turns their wrists slightly, revealing a pattern of stars embedded in their sleeve, her grandmother's constellation. During a recess, Eleanor excuses herself to the restroom, but instead follows a service corridor where the figure intercepts her. Up close, she realizes they appear human but with subtle differences: eyes that reflect light like polished opals, skin with an almost imperceptible shimmer. "Dr. Wright," they say in perfect English, "I am Kaya of the Kronos Collective. We've been waiting for you to find us." Eleanor keeps her distance. "How do I know I can trust you?" Kaya smiles. "Your grandmother showed you Cassiopeia in the official sky charts, but in private, she traced a different pattern and called it Eleanor's crown, a constellation that exists only between you two." Eleanor's suspicion falters. "What are you? Aliens? Time travelers?" "Neither and both. We are human, but evolved through temporal exposure over countless generations. Some of us were born centuries from now. Others come from parallel Earths where humanity developed differently." Kaya glances toward the main chamber. "The Concorde fears what you've discovered because it threatens their control. Humans perceive time differently. Our neural pathways process temporal shifts as natural variations rather than as trauma." A distant alarm sounds, and Kaya tenses. "We don't have long. The Concorde monitors everything. Meet us tonight at these coordinates. Come alone and bring your core research team. What you've discovered is only the beginning." Before Eleanor can respond, security personnel round the corner. Kaya seems to flicker momentarily before adopting a perfect diplomatic aide persona, nodding respectfully to the guards while slipping Eleanor a small device disguised as a standard UN security pass. Hours later, as Eleanor's team approaches the abandoned warehouse at the designated coordinates, they hear the high-pitched whine of Concorde engines overhead. Inside, they find not just Kaya, but a dozen others, some visibly human, others with the same subtle differences marking them as Kronos. "Welcome," says an older man with eyes that seem to see through time itself. "I'm Omar, leader of Earth's Kronos Enclave. We've prepared for this moment for generations." The building shudders as something impacts nearby. The Kronos move with practiced efficiency, activating technology that blends seamlessly with the warehouse's decaying infrastructure. "The Concorde has declared you enemies of galactic stability," Omar explains as a temporal shield engulfs the building. "They've always known this day would come. Now you must decide, will humanity claim its birthright as navigators of time, or surrender its future to those who would keep us contained?" Through the warehouse windows, Eleanor watches Concorde troops deploying temporal disruptors. Her human security team, hand-picked veterans, adapt instantly to the shifting temporal field, moving in patterns that confuse the alien soldiers whose rigid training provides no counter to human improvisation. "They never understood us," Omar says quietly. "Evolution shaped humans through constant survival challenges. We adapted to changing conditions because we had to. Their species evolved in stable environments with predictable parameters. They can't comprehend how we think because they've never faced extinction dozens of times over as we have." Eleanor watches her security team outmaneuver forces with superior technology through sheer adaptability and realizes that humanity's greatest strength isn't the technology she discovered. It's the uniquely human mind that conceived it. Deep within the abandoned mining complex, Eleanor's makeshift laboratory hums with a strange energy. Jury-rigged equipment lines the walls, power cables snake across the floor, and the central temporal displacement chamber glows with an ethereal blue light. The team works in near silence, each focused on their assigned tasks with the intensity of people who know they're being hunted. Zeth, the Concord defector, watches Jamie calibrate the neural interface with unhidden fascination. His elongated fingers occasionally twitch toward the equipment, then retreat as if remembering his promise not to interfere. "I still don't understand how you do this," Zeth admits, his translator giving his words a mechanical cadence. "My people would need quantum supercomputers to calculate what you seem to sense instinctively." Jamie, barely out of her teens with a genius for programming that universities had fought over before the crisis, shrugs without looking up from her work. "It's like swimming. You can calculate all the fluid dynamics you want, but some things you learn by feeling the water." Eleanor enters from the adjoining chamber where Omar and the other Cronus have been helping her map the temporal labyrinth. Dark circles under her eyes betray her exhaustion, but her movements remain precise, deliberate. "The neural interface is ready for testing," Dr. Kazan announces, adjusting the strange headset that blends Cronus technology with human innovation. "But Eleanor, I must register my objection again. We haven't fully mapped the potential neurological impacts off." "We don't have time for safety protocols," Eleanor interrupts, taking the headset. "The Concord forces have located our previous 2 facilities. It's only a matter of days before they find this one." The team falls silent as Eleanor settles into the modified medical chair. Connections snake from the headset to the temporal field generator, creating a circuit between her mind and the time stream itself. Jamie initiates the startup sequence while Dr. Kazan monitors Eleanor's vital signs on equipment that looks cobbled together from hospital castoffs and salvaged Cronus tech. Beginning temporal immersion in 3, 2, 1. Jamie's voice is steadied despite her white-knuckled grip on the control panel. Eleanor's body goes rigid, then unnaturally still. On the monitors, her brainwave patterns shift into configurations Kazan has never seen before, rhythms that shouldn't be possible in a human brain. "She's navigating the temporal currents," Omar explains, his eyes reflecting the blue light of the equipment, experiencing multiple timelines simultaneously. Hours compress into minutes for the observers as Eleanor's consciousness travels where no probe could go. When her eyes finally snap open, they contain the distant look of someone who has seen too much, too quickly. "I found something," she whispers, her voice hoarse. "The ruins. They weren't alien." She struggles to sit up, accepting water from Marcus with shaking hands. The team gathers close as Eleanor describes vast ruined cities scattered across different timelines. Advanced technology beyond even Concord capabilities, but with architecture and design elements unmistakably human in origin. "The writing," she continues, "I could almost read it. Not quite our language, but related. Evolved. And there were records, fragments about something called the temporal collapse." She projects her memories onto the lab's main display through the neural interface. The team stares in stunned silence at images of a civilization that could only be described as human, but thousands of years more advanced than present Earth. "This doesn't make sense," Marcus objects. "If humans achieved this level of advancement, why don't we remember it? Why isn't it in our history?" A slow understanding dawns across Zeth's alien features. "Because it hasn't happened in your timeline, or because someone made certain you forgot." Eleanor nods grimly. "These ruins exist in fractured timelines, like echoes of a reality that was shattered. And I found something else." She displays an image of a familiar symbol, the same constellation pattern that her grandmother had shown her that had appeared on Kaya's sleeve, etched into the ruins of what appeared to be a massive temporal research facility. "Whatever catastrophe happened there," Eleanor says quietly, "it wasn't an accident. And somehow, we're connected to it. All of this, the Concord's fear of humans developing time travel, the Cronus Collective's existence, even my discovery, it's all connected to whatever happened in those ruins." Jamie, staring at the constellation symbol, whispers the question they're all thinking. What if we're not rediscovering time travel? What if we're remembering it? The holographic reconstruction hovers in the center of the command room, casting everyone's faces in an eerie blue glow. Eleanor and her team stand transfixed as fragments of data from 100 different timelines coalesce into a coherent narrative that rewrites everything they thought they knew. According to these temporal echoes, Dr. Kazan explains, manipulating the display with practiced gestures, human civilization achieved interstellar capabilities approximately 12,000 years ago in a different timeline. Marcus shakes his head in disbelief. That contradicts all archaeological evidence. Because we're not looking at our direct past, Eleanor responds, her voice steady despite her exhaustion. We're seeing parallel development paths that were reset. The hologram shifts to show a thriving civilization spreading across multiple star systems, architecture both familiar and alien in its advanced design. Human faces with subtle variations, some with features adapted for different planetary environments, others with technological enhancements, all unmistakably descendants of Earth. They mastered temporal physics, continues Kazan, but created something they couldn't control. The next images make everyone flinch, reality itself seeming to fracture across multiple worlds simultaneously, civilizations collapsing in temporal catastrophe. Omar steps forward, his Cronus heritage evident in the subtle temporal energy that shimmers across his skin. The original human temporal pioneers attempted to solve the entropy problem, the eventual heat death of the universe. Their solution was elegant but flawed. And the Cronus? Eleanor asks. We're not observers, Omar admits quietly. We're survivors. When the collapse began, a small group of temporal scientists created pocket dimensions to preserve fragments of humanity. Over generations, exposure to temporal energies changed us physically. We became what you see now. The most shocking revelation appears next. Records showing the formation of the Galactic Concord, clearly established as a direct response to the human-caused temporal collapse. They engineered a multi-species alliance with one primary directive. Eleanor realizes, reading the translated text, prevent humanity from rediscovering temporal physics at all costs. Jamie points to a map showing systematic monitoring stations across Earth's history. They've been watching us for millennia, subtly guiding our scientific development away from dangerous paths. Guiding? Marcus scoffs. You mean hampering, holding us back. The facility's alarm system suddenly blares to life, red lights pulsing throughout the complex. Surveillance feeds show Concorde ships breaking through the atmosphere, their formation unmistakably military rather than diplomatic. Multiple temporal signatures detected. The security system announces, chronometric weapons activated. Eleanor glances at the external monitors. They're done pretending. Ambassador Vexlor's face appears on every communication screen simultaneously, his crystalline features set in cold determination. Dr. Wright, by authority of the Temporal Preservation Protocols, Earth is now under Concorde protection. Surrender your research and personnel immediately. Protection. Eleanor responds, keeping him talking while her team implements emergency protocols. Is that what you call planetary occupation? You don't understand the danger. Vexlor insists, genuine fear briefly visible beneath his diplomatic facade. Your species nearly destroyed reality once before. We cannot allow a second collapse. The first temporal bombs detonate over major cities worldwide, designed to create stasis fields that freeze regions in temporal bubbles, preventing further research while Concorde forces secure critical infrastructure. Eleanor watches in horror as Washington, D.C. disappears under a shimmering dome of energy. Something's wrong, Zeth observes, studying incoming data. The stasis fields aren't fully forming. Across every affected region, a strange phenomenon occurs. Humans within the fields move slowly but continue functioning where other species would be completely immobilized. The Concorde forces, expecting total incapacitation, find themselves facing unexpected resistance. Impossible. Vexlor's voice carries genuine shock as reports flood in. Temporal stasis shoaled. should affect beings who perceive time linearly. Eleanor interrupts, understanding dawning across her features. But human consciousness evolved to maintain continuity through changing conditions. Omar nods, a grim smile forming. Another survival adaptation. When faced with extreme temporal distortion, the human mind creates perceptual bridges. We literally dream our way through disruptions that would shatter other species' consciousness. Eleanor turns to her team, determination replacing shock. This resistance won't last long, but it gives us a window. We need to implement the Lazarus Protocol immediately. That's theoretical. Marcus objects. We've never tested it on this scale. We don't have a choice. Eleanor responds, already initiating the complex sequence. If humanity is going to survive, we need to remember who we really are. Temporal warfare transforms the landscape in ways that defy conventional physics. Outside the mining complex's reinforced windows, reality itself seems to stutter and fragment as Concord forces deploy increasingly desperate measures against the human resistance. Trees flicker between seasons and seconds, buildings age and rejuvenate in eye-blink cycles, and the sky cycles through dawn and dusk as temporal distortions ripple outward. Eleanor stands before the Lazarus device, a hybrid of her original temporal displacement technology and ancient designs recovered from the Cronus archives. Its crystalline components pulse with energy as the final calibrations are completed. The temporal beacons are in position. Marcus reports, his voice tight with tension. All 7 continents covered. Once activated, the field will encompass the entire planet. Eleanor nods, her focus absolute despite the chaos. And the volunteers. Ready, Jamie confirms, gesturing to the 12 people seated in a circle around the device, a mix of her team and Cronus members, each connected to neural interfaces. They understand the risks. The walls shudder as another temporal assault hits their shields. On the monitors, Eleanor watches Concord soldiers phase through multiple tactical approaches simultaneously, the same attack executed with slight variations across parallel timelines, designed to overwhelm defenders with probability itself. Yet the human resistance forces demonstrate uncanny adaptability. Where Concord troops execute perfect but rigid protocols, humans improvise in ways that defy prediction algorithms. Soldiers with minimal training instinctively counter temporal shifts that should, by all Concord models, render them helpless. They still don't understand us, Zeth observes, watching the battle with analytical detachment. My people see time as a mathematical construct to be calculated. Humans perceive it as an environment to be navigated. A priority transmission cuts through their security measures. Ambassador Vex Lore, his crystalline features fractured with stress lines. Dr. Wright, you must abort. The Lazarus Protocol will trigger cascade failures across multiple timelines. That's not concern for us, Eleanor responds coolly. That's fear of what happens when humans remember. You don't understand the consequences, the ambassador insists. The collapse nearly destroyed. She cuts the transmission as another temporal assault rocks the facility. We're out of time. The Lazarus device activates with a pulse of energy that momentarily silences everything. The battle outside, the alarms, even the hum of equipment. For 3 heartbeats, the world seems suspended between moments. Then the neural interfaces flare with blinding light as the volunteers gasp in unified shock. On monitors across the facility, a strange phenomenon appears. Millions of humans worldwide, regardless of their proximity to temporal technology, simultaneously experience something like a shared dream. Scattered reports flood in describing visions of advanced cities, interstellar travel, and technologies beyond current understanding. It's working, Omar whispers, watching the data streams. The genetic memory blocks are dissolving. What the Concord never understood, what even Eleanor only recently discovered, was that the original temporal scientists encoded backup knowledge into human DNA itself. Not detailed schematics, but instinctive understanding, buried beneath layers of engineered amnesia imposed after the collapse. The Lazarus Protocol doesn't transmit new information. It awakens what was already there. Outside, the battle shifts dramatically as ordinary humans begin demonstrating unprecedented temporal awareness. Civilians instinctively avoid areas seconds before temporal bombs detonate. Military personnel adapt to chronometric weapons without training. Around the world, researchers make simultaneous breakthroughs in temporal physics as blocked neural pathways suddenly clear. My God, Marcus breathes, watching the feeds. It's like humanity is waking up all at once. A priority alert from their temporal sensors draws everyone's attention to a new threat. Vexlore, desperate to contain the situation, has deployed forbidden technology, a chronometric cascade designed to lock Earth's timeline into a causality loop, effectively removing it from the universal time stream. If that device activates, Earth will experience the same day on repeat for eternity. Zeth explains, horror evident despite his alien features. A temporal prison. Eleanor studies the tactical display, watching as diverse human forces, military units, Cronus agents, and newly awakened civilians with emerging temporal abilities converge on the Concorde's primary temporal transmitter. Where the Concorde expected to face disorganized resistance, they instead encounter humans operating with intuitive coordination across multiple timelines. They thought they were containing a threat, Eleanor says quietly, watching humanity demonstrate its true potential. They never realized they were restraining a guardian. A stillness falls over the command center as Eleanor studies the temporal scanner readings. The holographic display shows numerous gaps in the time stream, areas where reality itself seems to thin or disappear entirely. Her temporal scouts were sent to map these anomalies, but only one has returned, his body aged decades beyond his chronological age. Something's moving in the void between timelines, the returned scout, Dr. Chen, explains in a voice that trembles with exhaustion. He hasn't slept since his return, despite medical recommendations. Something vast, something hungry. Eleanor watches as he programs the scanner to display what he witnessed. The hologram shifts to show a visualization of the multiverse, countless timeline streams flowing in parallel like rivers of light. Between them, areas of absolute darkness move with deliberate purpose, consuming entire timelines that simply wink out of existence upon contact. The convergence, Omar whispers, his face ashen. The other Cronus members exchange looks of unmistakable dread. You know what this is? Eleanor asks sharply. The Cronus leader nods slowly. There are records, fragments we preserved. The temporal collapse wasn't merely a disaster caused by human experimentation. It was a desperate measure against an entity that exists in the void between timelines, something that feeds on reality itself. The facility's long-range sensors suddenly blare warnings as Concorde vessels begin retreating from Earth orbit with uncharacteristic haste. Even Ambassador Vexlore's command ship abandons the chronometric cascade device, leaving it partially activated in unstable orbit. They're running, Marcus observes with disbelief. Zeth studies the sensor readings, his alien features registering something between recognition and horror. They've detected the temporal thinning. The Concorde leadership knows what it means. Dr. Kazan completes an analysis of the abandoned cascade device. The partial activation has accelerated the temporal degradation. Earth's timeline is becoming increasingly visible to whatever exists in the void. Eleanor accesses the newly awakened memories that the Lazarus Protocol unlocked, not just her own but the collective understanding now flowing through humanity's shared consciousness. Images of an ancient conflict flash through her mind. The original human civilization detecting the convergence, attempting to fight it conventionally with weapons that tore holes in reality itself, failing catastrophically as the entity fed on the temporal energy released by their attacks. The Chromatas weren't just preserving knowledge, Eleanor realizes aloud. They've been maintaining the temporal barriers keeping the convergence at bay. The barriers created during the original collapse. Omar nods grimly. For thousands of years, we've reinforced the walls between timelines, prevented dimensional breaches, guided humanity away from technologies that would draw attention. But every temporal incursion weakens the barriers, and now, with the Concord's weapons and our own awakening, the implications settle heavily on everyone present. Both the Concord and humanity have been unwitting players in a game spanning millennia, their conflict drawing the attention of something far worse than either could imagine. This is why the original humans reset reality, Eleanor whispers, not to undo their mistake, but to create a new timeline framework, one that could contain the convergence while humanity evolved again, differently. Jamie points to the scanner, where the dark patches between timelines grow more pronounced. It's accelerating. The barriers are failing. Eleanor makes a decision that sends chills through everyone present. We need to go to Earth Prime, the original timeline before the first collapse. If there's a solution, it lies with our ancestors who faced this before. That's suicide. Marcus objects. Navigating through the convergence's domain to reach a timeline that might not even exist anymore. I'm not asking for volunteers, Eleanor responds, already preparing the necessary equipment. I'll go alone. Dr. Chen, his body aged but eyes resolute, steps forward. Not alone. I've seen it. I know how to navigate the dark spaces. One by one, others join. Jamie with her unparalleled programming skills, Dr. Kazan with her medical expertise, and even Zeth, who removes his Concord insignia with finality. The Concord believes retreat is the only option. The alien says quietly, perhaps humanity will show us another way. As they prepare the temporal vessel, a hybrid of Eleanor's original design and recovered ancient technology, Omar places a hand on Eleanor's shoulder. You understand what you're truly seeking? He asks softly. The weapon our ancestors created but never deployed. Eleanor nods, the weight of uncovered memories heavy on her consciousness. If it exists, I'll find it. And this time, we'll use it correctly. Eleanor stands alone on the shores of an impossible world, waves of golden light lapping at her feet instead of water. Earth Prime stretches before her in breathtaking majesty, a civilization that defies everything she once believed possible. Crystalline spires rise miles into the atmosphere, pulsing with energy that seems alive. Transportation systems flow like liquid metal through transparent tubes, connecting vast habitation complexes. The sky itself contains patterns that suggest higher dimensions folded into visible space. Her temporal vessel, now reduced to scattered components after the harrowing journey through the convergence's domain, lies half buried in the luminescent sand behind her. Only she survived the crossing. The others lost to temporal eddies or worse. Their sacrifices burn in her memory, fueling her determination. Remarkable adaptation. Comes a voice behind her, speaking perfect English, despite its musical qualities. Eleanor turns to face a figure that appears human yet somehow more, a woman with features that suggest both tremendous age and timeless youth simultaneously. Her eyes contain galaxies. You've crossed what cannot be crossed, the woman continues, led by memory fragments encoded in primitive DNA, navigating through the convergence itself. My colleagues said it was impossible. Who are you? Eleanor asks, though part of her already knows. I am Director Eliana Wright, the woman responds. Or rather, I am what your genetic line was designed to become. Welcome to the origin point, ancestor. The impossible truth settles over Eleanor like a weight. She hasn't traveled to meet her ancestors. She has become the ancestor. Earth Prime isn't the past. It's the future that created the past. The weapon, Eleanor starts, her mission clear despite her confusion. Director Wright smiles sadly. There is no weapon. That was never the solution. She guides Eleanor through the magnificent library of ages, where the complete history of multiple timeline iterations is preserved. The truth unfolds with each step. The advanced human civilization didn't accidentally discover the convergence. They created it through their attempts to solve entropy itself. Their efforts to create perpetual energy by tapping the void between dimensions awakened something that had always existed there, something that found our reality suddenly accessible. We tried to fight it conventionally, Wright explains, showing recordings of devastating weapons that tore reality itself. Each attack only made it stronger, feeding on the temporal energy we deployed against it. The desperate solution wasn't destruction but reconstruction, resetting reality while preserving fragments of their civilization's knowledge in encoded DNA, creating humans who would eventually evolve the ability to perceive time differently. Not to restart the cycle, Eleanor realizes with growing understanding, but to find another way. Yes, Wright confirms. The convergence cannot be destroyed because it's the necessary counterbalance to creation itself, the void that defines existence. Our mistake was trying to overcome it through dominance. Eleanor finally grasps the truth that has eluded both humanity and the Concord. The original civilization's final project wasn't a weapon but a transformation, a way to evolve consciousness itself into something that could perceive the convergence not as an enemy, but as another form of existence seeking connection. Take this knowledge back, Wright tells her, transferring understanding directly into Eleanor's mind. The solution was never control of time, but harmony with it. Not separation of dimensions, but integration. The return journey feels both instantaneous and eternal as Eleanor navigates the void differently now, not fighting against the darkness between timelines but moving with it, understanding its currents. She emerges back into her timeline at the exact moment she left, though she carries eternities of understanding within her. Without hesitation, she connects to the global network established by the Lazarus Protocol, extending humanity's awakened consciousness into a unified field. Through this connection, humanity doesn't attack the convergence but reaches out to it, offering understanding instead of resistance. Their unique consciousness, evolved through countless challenges and adaptations, allows them to perceive the entity not as a destroyer, but as another form of existence seeking meaning. The human temporal collective reshapes reality around the entity, creating space for both to exist without consuming each other. Where the original civilization failed through confrontation, the new humanity succeeds through integration, their adaptability becoming their greatest strength. As the new equilibrium stabilizes, the Concord species witness humanity's true power, not the ability to conquer time but the wisdom to become its interpreters, preserving the universe through understanding rather than control. They always feared we would end reality, Eleanor tells Ambassador Vexlor when the Concord cautiously returns. They never considered we might be the ones to save it. Across all timelines, new possibilities bloom as the boundaries between dimensions become corridors rather than barriers. Humanity steps into its destiny not as masters of the universe, but as its most dedicated mediators, uniquely qualified by the very evolutionary quirks that once seemed like weaknesses, but proved to be exactly what the universe needed to survive.